Ram Ram and Namaste, dear friends, from the beautiful and sacred islands of Hawaii, USA. A few days ago, at a vibrant international get-together at a friend's place, the host suddenly asked me about what Hindus believe in. Specifically, do we believe in one God or many gods? Are we monotheists or polytheists? Mono means one, poly means many, and a theist is a person who believes in the existence of something supernatural. As per Western theology, those who believe in the existence of one God are monotheists, and those who believe in the existence of many gods are polytheists. So the question is, are Hindus monotheists or polytheists? Do we believe in the existence of one single God, or do we believe in the existence of many gods? Friends from several countries and belonging to different faiths were gathered there at this friend's house who asked me the question. It was a lively gathering, and the atmosphere at his place was very warm and cozy. The living room where we were all gathered and a decent kitchen garden that he had next to it were decorated with the flickering glow of candles and an array of beautiful and serene Hawaiian and American cultural artifacts. In this lively gathering, Christian, Muslim, Jew, Buddhist, and atheist friends were present and were engaged in conversations, different kinds of conversations. I was the only Hindu. Everybody was having a hearty time. It was a vibrant and jolly environment, and I could feel the unique positive energy in the room. As the evening unfolded, however, the conversation moved to religion and politics. And as you would imagine, the air became a little thick. Some expressed genuine curiosity about the different wars and other geopolitical issues that we are surrounded with these days. A few members of the group also started to show signs of stress and restlessness, as if some heavy pressure had started to envelop them. As time passed, the conversation started to get more emotionally intense. The air at the gathering became even more dense, specifically when the discussions moved into the complexities of the Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Hamas conflict. A mix of intense and uneasy emotions started to hold sway over the arguments. In that passionate atmosphere, deeply rooted convictions held by various members started to appear. The atmosphere that was friendly and light started to turn into an atmosphere that was heavy and at times argumentatively combative. Making sense of this, a few of the friends just politely took their leave, citing excuses related to work. I also felt like leaving, but this was not to be. Just when I was about to take a leave, in this intense situation when the mood of the party had palpably shifted, the host suddenly turned towards me and asked, "Hey buddy, tell us about Hinduism." In his college days, this friend of mine studied philosophy of religion. He said, "I am sort of clear about the fundamental tenets of Christianity and Islam. They have at their foundation some pretty straightforward beliefs. Christianity has the Bible as the sacred book. They believe in salvation through faith in Jesus Christ, and they have their Holy Trinity. Islam has the Quran as their sacred book. Muslims consider it to be the final and complete revelation, and Muhammad the final prophet. Both religions believe in a judgment day and in eternal heaven and eternal hell. For the extremist believers in both, he said, you are either with them or against them. If you are with them, you will likely go to heaven. If not, you have a spot reserved most definitely in eternal hell. Both religions believe in proselytizing. They consider it one of their core religious duties to actively convert someone from a different religion or belief system to their religion. and both are very clearly and vocally monotheistic. They believe in one God and no other. One final sacred book, one final messenger or Messiah, one final judgment day, one final judgment, eternal heaven or eternal hell, one final religious doctrine that should be spread on the whole of the planet Earth, and one final God for all. This is their formula and prescription for humanity, he said. And he added, while there are irreconcilable doctrinal differences and even theological and physical military battles and struggles between them and within these two religions, this pretty much summarizes the basic beliefs of both. But he added and said further, I don't know much about Hinduism. When you look at it, the Hindu religion seems so diverse and complex and colorful in its traditions and also very mystical and interesting. But it is also very confusing to me. To begin with, he said, you guys have so many gods. More than 2 or 3 million, some say. Do you really have so many gods? How do you manage that? I'm curious. Do you believe in one God or do you really believe in many gods? Are you guys monotheistic or are you guys polytheistic? So are you like Christians and Muslims monotheistic or are you polytheistic? And then he started to look at me anticipating an answer. I don't know why in the midst of that tense atmosphere that had gotten emotionally really intense, he suddenly turned towards me and asked me these rather difficult questions. Perhaps he wanted to divert the discussion from the uneasy topics that the evening went into, or maybe he was just genuinely curious. Whatever the reason, I found myself in a very difficult spot. In that kind of an atmosphere, I really did not want to engage in conversations regarding religion and politics and therefore not answer the question. I did not want to answer the question also because that setting was not the best scholarly setting in which I could explain what I understood of the rich, complex, and multi-dimensional nature of Hinduism, which is very distinct when you look at it both conceptually and characteristically than the religions he talked about. The questions he posed indeed were interesting and I considered them important, and perhaps many in the gathering genuinely wanted to know the answer. But explaining the Hindu worldview, which really is very complex, diverse, multi-sided and multi-dimensional, and more importantly, very different in taste and texture than the Semitic or the Abrahamic religions to which most of my friends there were exposed to, I felt would be an uphill, if not impossible task. I did not want to answer the question also, and maybe more importantly also, because I'm not a scholar or expert on Hinduism. I have just as much ordinary, normal, everyday understanding of Hinduism as any other Hindu around me would perhaps have. And I did not want to present an inaccurate picture. And in India, no one ever asked me such questions. At the most, people would ask, Kiski puja karte ho? Kiske bhakt ho? And the answer is very simple. Mata ka bhakt hoon, या मैं हनुमान जी का भक्त हूँ, हनुमान जी की पूजा करता हूँ. Who do you worship? Whose devotee are you? I worship the Divine Mother. I am a devotee of Lord Hanuman. I almost decided that I should just politely excuse myself and decline the request. But I also did not want to disrespect the host. While I was in this conundrum, I saw that the host who had asked the question was now looking at me intently, and I could see that he was eagerly waiting for me to answer his question. Another friend jumped in and she said, Hey, yes, I've been wanting to ask you about your faith for some time now too. We are curious to know. Do you have so many gods? Tell us. So telling myself that I would answer the question in a short and simple manner and get done with it, I started answering. The answer, however, as you would also see, ended up being not short and not simple. But it was very much appreciated, and surprisingly, it took the tension and heavy pressure that had accumulated there down. After I had spoken, I could see some relief and open-mindedness return to the gathering. After I came home, I jotted down the points that I made, and the next couple of days I refined and elaborated upon them for this video so that I could present a relatively more informative, authentic, and meaningful talk. My friend had asked specifically, do Hindus believe in one God or many gods? Are you monotheistic or polytheistic? I started by proposing to all of the friends who were present there that the question itself may be wrong. And wrong in at least two important ways. First, wrong in its use of terms, concepts, categories, and frameworks. And second, wrong in its underlying assumptions. I said that the question is wrong because it uses terms, concepts, categories, and frameworks that are based on the theology of the Judeo-Christian and Islamic traditions and the Western scholarship of religion. These are terms that are heavily loaded, and they carry a dense history of religious and military conflict between these three religions that were born in the Middle East. A conflict that continues till today, and one that actually made the environment in the room so heavy. They are also terms, I said, that are diffused with colossal ecological, cultural, social, economic, and political context and history. The current global idea of religion that placed monotheism at the summit and has sought to dishonor and belittle all other traditions is also a product of the colonial era. According to Dr. David Frawley, it is Eurocentric view of religion that brought in the old monotheistic denigration of earlier traditions as pagans, heathens, idolaters, kafirs, or even devil worshippers through the use of terms like polytheism, animism, folk religions, and mythology. And these demeaned other traditions or simply just reduced them to status of cults and superstitions. Beyond the politics of the colonial era and religious dogmatism of these so-called monotheistic traditions, I said, these terms and frameworks simply cannot capture the Indian worldview, which is rooted in the tradition of dharma. This, I said, needs to be explained more. I told them that within the context of monotheism and polytheism, it's not that we cannot find similar or related ideas and practices in Hinduism. We most certainly can. But for us, monotheism, polytheism, etc. are simply not the most important terms. They are not as important for us as they are for these other traditions. They are important generally, but they are not the key or the central concepts or even concerns for us in our everyday spiritual life. In our tradition, the terms we use that are important for us are Dvait, Advait, Vishishtadvait, Purnadvait, etc. We talk about Tattvagyan, Sat Asat, Purusha Prakriti, Para Apara Prakriti, Sagun and Nirguna, Kshar and Akshar Brahma, and so on. And it is these concepts, categories, and frameworks that we primarily use in the Hindu philosophical and spiritual discourse. And these differ significantly from the Judeo-Christian and Islamic ones, as well as from most of the analytical frameworks utilized by Western theological scholarship. Asking me as a Hindu whether I believe in monotheism or polytheism is like asking a Christian or a Muslim whether he believes in Dvait or Advait or Vishishtadvait, or even worse, how you as a Christian or a Muslim plan to attain moksha or nirvana. Yes, after trying to understand what these terms mean, one may attempt to answer the question in some manner. However, these categories are not the main categories or important categories through which a Muslim or Christian looks at his or her own religion or faith. These categories are not the defining categories or concerns of their faith, and it would be an imposition and arrogance really on my part to try to limit their worldview to mine or make value judgments or spiritual judgments about them based on my categories. Just as it would be an imposition and arrogance on their part to judge me on the basis of their categories, which I said I should mention has unfortunately been the case for a long time in history now and has led to enormous human suffering and pain. I said I would very much like to see the intellectual gaze reversed, 180 degrees reversed. I feel that there has been a large historical imbalance in the interreligious dialogue in which the prevalent discourse either ignorantly or arrogantly attempts to bracket other traditions within the frameworks of the Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic, and Western theological traditions, and demands that the Hindus and everybody else should explain ourselves from within their frameworks. I am all for mutually enriching cross-cultural and interreligious dialogue. But in a true sense, cross-cultural and interreligious dialogue cannot take place until this heavy imbalance is corrected and the gaze of intellectual analysis and spiritual judgment is reversed. And for that, we who have been at the receiving end of history, at least some of us may have to stretch and take things to the other intellectual extreme, especially when some of the most outspoken individuals from these traditions deliberately persist in choosing intellectually either ignorant or arrogant positions towards us. Instead of acknowledging past mistakes and atrocities which would pave the way for a more collectively enriching future as one human family for all of us, they persist in glorifying the plunder, loot, and destruction, both material and intellectual, that our societies have endured over the past 7 or 8 centuries. Indian civilization, I told them, is perhaps the only civilization that has survived the onslaughts of different religious, colonial, and communist ideological crusades of the past several centuries. यूनान मिस्र रोमा सब मिट गए जहाँ से, बाकी मगर है अब तक नामो निशां हमारा, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, सदियों रहा है दुश्मन दौरे जहाँ हमारा. Through the help of constant social, political, and military struggles and continuing intellectual, literary, and spiritual innovations, our brave and creative ancestors were able to preserve and retain the enduring spirit and cultural richness of India. We Hindus, if you look at our history through unbiased and unprejudiced eyes, are a true testament to the strength of human resilience and the power of cultural heritage to withstand the storms and tests of time. Indian civilization stands as a guiding light of resilience in the face of invading barbarism. We have suffered profound losses, yes. And if these imperialistic, religious, colonial, and ideological powers want to feel proud of the pain and loss that they have inflicted on us, they can. But we survived. And while so much was lost, we have retained much along with the core of our soul and spirit. We have retained our Agni, the mystic fire. And I must add, we have not merely survived, but we have come out of the ordeals stronger. We are poised to thrive once again. Our journey towards resurgence staying true to the spirit of Sanatana Hindu Dharma signifies not only our own cultural and civilizational revitalization, but also our commitment to contribute to the material and spiritual richness of the lives of all of our human brothers and sisters around the world. India does not want to rise alone and never at the cost of other well-meaning people. India wants to rise hand in hand with its global counterparts, fostering cooperation, mutual growth, and prosperity for all. That is our vision, because that is what our culture's spiritual aspirations have been and are. But we have also learned our lessons, and we are determined to make sure what was inflicted upon us in the past never happens again. When I spoke about all this, there was a sudden upsurge of energy in the room, and I saw that the curiosity regarding the Hindu worldview increased, and also those who did not have an idea of what Indian civilization went through in the past 700 or 800 years, they seemed interested in knowing more about that aspect of India and Hindus as well. Sensing that I had digressed from the original question, I stopped, and that's when another friend interjected and said, "It's really interesting. I am a student of cultures, and I feel what you are saying is worthy of being heard and contemplated by those of us who might be straitjacketed in our narrow worldviews, believing that the world starts and ends with us. What you are saying is intellectually challenging and emotionally demanding." "I will confess," he said, "but it's goddamn interesting too. You proposed that this question, whether Hindus are monotheists or polytheists, is itself inherently wrong. Please continue to explain how." And so I continued. I told my friends that not only monotheism and polytheism, but the very starting point, the use of the word religion itself, is not valid for understanding or making an attempt to understand Hinduism.